Well, good evening to all. Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. It is a Thursday night, the 21st of March, the first full day of spring. And, of course, why not have a, let's call it a spring-winter storm in parts of the Northeast. Now, this is going to be elevation-driven. And from my past experience with dealing with elevation-driven snows, the issue of knowing your local topography and geography and climate is oh so important. It's really difficult for me in my position down near the coast and on Long Island to evaluate what could happen in the elevated areas up through upstate New York. And there's a big difference between being 500 feet up versus 1,000 feet up versus say 2,000 feet or more higher. So there are going to be some odd numbers. I venture to say that there will be some areas that might be expecting higher amounts that will be disappointed. On the other hand, there may be areas that are expecting lower amounts and may get a big surprise. So I'm going to really kind of defer to the Weather Service with respect to the numbers that they've put out. I did notice that they have already moved some of the numbers around where they've brought it down in some areas and brought it up in others. So I imagine there's going to be a lot of forecast volatility until the radar echoes actually get up there in upstate New York and into Vermont and also into western Mass and northwestern Connecticut. So once you see the radar echoes overhead and the low pulls away east of New Jersey and starts to run into southern New England, and you get the dynamics to really get going, then you could probably get a better sense of where this is all headed. So nice to see everybody on board tonight, all very interested in what's going on. And I will also point out, a number of you have been talking about the tropical cyclones that have been impacting, that has impacted southern Africa, the one that went into Mozambique, and there are several cyclones that are on their way to Australia. Just remember two things. This is, for them, this is our September in terms of the activity of the tropical cyclones in the southern hemisphere. September's our most active month, and for them it's March. So we're kind of in the same place climatologically. Just that obviously our summers in the northern hemisphere are exactly the opposite in the southern hemisphere. If you want to see more on this, tropicaltidbits.com, if you go to current storms, he's got them all. So you can take a look at all the storms that are impacting the tropical storms that are impacting the entire world, including the southern hemisphere. And once you get used to the different ways the advisories are sent out, you can you'll know exactly what you're dealing with in terms of strength. So that's on tropicaltidbits.com, and just go to the where he has current storms. Okay, so let's start with tonight's watches and warnings. In the Northeast, we have a sizable area in upstate New York running from the Pennsylvania-New York state border right up I-81 to northern and northeastern New York. Surrounding counties going into northeastern Pennsylvania actually under winter weather advisories, and we've got some advisories in the southern Catskills, warnings as you go further north, and then there's a mix of advisories and winter storm warnings up in an area from northwestern Connecticut all the way up to the Vermont-Canada border. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this storm plays out. We have, of course, the continuation of the historic flooding, particularly the Missouri River. That's the big deal, is the flooding of the Missouri River. And the historic flooding continues across the plains into the upper Midwest and then extends back through the northern Rockies into the Northwest. And this is going to go on for a while with the big snow melt that's occurring and the record snowfall that has happened. Meanwhile, a little bit further south, let me just jump back to my neck of the woods. We have flood watches up for much of the western counties of New Jersey, coastal flood warnings up for a few counties in and around New York Harbor, and advisories, coastal flood advisories for the rest of the New Jersey shore down to Delaware, and then northeast across Long Island. We even have coastal flood warnings up for Westchester County. There's a little bit of flooding of Long Island Sound going on in some areas, so they've got a coastal flood warning up there. In the west, a scattering of winter weather advisories as the next weather system is making its way inland and east, and that'll be the system that's coming up for Monday. We have on the severe weather risk today just a small area of marginal risk in northern New Mexico, and you've got a couple of areas of thunderstorms, but you can see the precip in that comma-shaped signature that's moving up the coast. No thunderstorms are being indicated there, but I did actually see some lightning strikes out in the ocean on one of the latest radars in a band that's off the coast there, but no severe weather to speak of. So I'm going to run through what the forecast is with regards to rain, and then we'll look at snow, and also going to look back at a couple of storms from the past and what they've produced with these elevation-driven events. But here is the Weather Service's rainfall map, forecast map. So this carries us through the rest of the event. I just want to point out that this is precip in addition to what's already fallen. So this is on top of, this is anything after 4 o'clock this afternoon. So we're still looking for an additional inch to an inch and a half to an inch and 3/4 in parts of eastern Pennsylvania and western New Jersey. Amounts lessen as you head toward the coast. And the track of this low is literally straddling the immediate coastline. So the heaviest rain is getting thrown back to the northwest and really not getting a whole lot, say, from New York City on east, where we're talking about 3/4 of an inch of liquid. 1 inch liquid amounts going all the way up into upstate New York. And of course, how much of that is snow remains to be seen. With the snow forecast, we're going to give this map a little time to load here. Oh, it loaded pretty quick. Must have had it in its memory. So here are the Weather Service. This is the Weather Service snow profile for the entire round of snow, which is going to last into Saturday morning in some places. And since yesterday, we've seen the amounts expanded across the Catskills and in central New York down toward the Pennsylvania border, in and around Binghamton, for example. Numbers were raised up for Syracuse. I think they had 6 yesterday. Now they're going for the high end at 8. And you've got a stripe of 1 foot plus snows there up in, well up into upstate New York, north and east of Watertown, and going toward the Vermont border. And then in Vermont itself, up and down the mountain chain, you've got some 1 foot plus snows there, and in the valleys on either side, you'll notice that if you run up the Hudson Valley, you're looking at 1 to 2, 1 to 3 inches, and it's in the mountains to the west, and the Adirondacks, and the Green and White Mountains to the east, where you're seeing the bigger amounts. And some of the higher amounts actually do extend down into the western part of the Berkshires, where you're seeing some numbers at 4, 5, or 6 inches. Again, I would just be really careful when you talk about elevation-driven snows. As I said at the beginning, some areas are going to surprise to the upside. Some areas are going to wind up surprising to the downside. And here are just a couple of National Weather Service snow forecast maps that I pulled up. This one is from Binghamton, so you can see what they're going for their particular area. The 8 at Syracuse, Rome at 6, Utica 7, Boonville at 11, Hamilton 13, Cooperstown 11, Binghamton itself 4, and then you start seeing the amounts lessen considerably as you go toward Ithaca, Elmira, and Bath. In the area to the east from the Weather Service office in Albany, which, if you remember yesterday, they had, I believe, Old Forge was at a 10, and now they're at a 9, so they just cut it back by a little bit. But some bigger amounts. Grafton, north and west of just to the west of the northwestern corner of Massachusetts at 14. Chatham down to about 4. Hunter Mountain 3. Westerlo at 6. You can see all the numbers here and the variations between valley and elevation. It's very, very clear here what happens as you run up the Hudson Valley and go to the upper Hudson Valley. 1 to 2, 1 to 3 inches, and then you bring the amounts up as you start to climb some height. Now, here's the storm on the latest satellite loop. Very impressive. You know, the satellite signature from yesterday showed a very, very impressive system here, and it's lifting up almost straight north. We had that low, that lead low off the Florida coast that ran to between the Bahamas and Bermuda yesterday. That is now, you can barely find it, but the remnant energy is probably off the screen at this point. But it was certainly important. It played a role here in allowing this system to try to punch further, straight to the north, reform back northwest, a new low, and move northward. Plus, you had the weather system swinging out of the Great Lakes and the upper trough with that. The cold front with that has completely fallen apart, and we just have seen this merging happen as that the two phases of the jet stream, the northern phase and the southern phase, have gotten together. So remember back from yesterday, you distinctly two separate looks here. The showers that were with the frontal system, they're gone because now it's really all about this developing low. Still a pretty active radar here tonight. The low center is somewhere in the southern portion of Chesapeake Bay or in the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula, moving northward or northeastward, just straddling just inland of the coast. And then it's going to just kind of deflect itself northeast from there, move over or just north of Long Island through southern New England, and it is going to intensify steadily as we move through tomorrow. And this is, of course, going to open the door for some big winds. Look at the heavy rain, by the way, in western Maryland. There's some very heavy rain showing up there. I know, Johnny Quest, you mentioned you got a pretty solid snowfall out of this. I did notice on some of the radars that have the precip type that the snow really showed up well in the elevated areas in northwestern Virginia. And there's a situation. You got a surprise. You got a nice surprise out of this in terms of the upside you produced. And now we're going to see how it plays out in upstate New York. Some of the lead precip is moving up into northern New York State at this point, but we really have to kind of wait for all the dynamics to get going to see start to accumulate, see the accumulated snows, and that's probably not going to happen until later on late tonight and on Friday. So Timothy Veltman brought two dates back, and I pulled up the April 8th. This is April 8th, going into April 9th of the year 2000, where there was a significant snowfall that occurred on the order of 6 to 12 inches, or in some cases more, in parts of the Northeast. And the surface map it's a little different, but the idea is kind of the same. Your low is coming up along or just inland of the coast, but you do have a little bit of cold air to play with. In this particular case, back through the Great Lakes and on up into Canada. Remember, this is now 18 days from now, when the average temperatures are going to be 5 to 6 degrees higher than they are right now. So temperatures in the 30s and even some upper 20s, that's pretty cold for this time of year. So I'm just going to roll through this surface map, and what happens is that you wind up with a deepening low that consolidates off the coast of Long Island. And now if you probably can see it pretty well on this map because the numbers are plotted pretty, they're of size. There's a 3-star moderate snow there for Binghamton with a temperature of 24. You've got a moderate rain for New York City. I don't know if that's LaGuardia or if that's supposed to be Newark, but it's moderate rain and 32 9 there. This is at 5 a.m. on Sunday, April the 9th. And then on the next map, you've got this wrapping up low in northeastern Connecticut. But look at the temperatures through upstate New York with this. Binghamton's at 22, Messina at 24. You've got some pretty cold air up in Canada too, with temperatures in the teens and even some single digits. That's all that cold air got drawn down into this. And the low really wraps up here in central Mass. It's a 988 low, and now it deepens to probably about an 86 low in northern New Hampshire. You've got temperatures in the 20s, heavy snow and 20 there at Messina, 29 reading. This is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at Binghamton, a 39-degree reading. I would just guess that's Newark there. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon on April 9th, that's cold. So this is, you get these very deep lows. And one of the things that goes along with this, if you take a look at this particular map, the color, not the surface part of it, but the colors represent what the upper air looked like for this particular event. And you have this long wave, negatively tilted trough that runs from Hudson Bay to the mid-Atlantic coast. This is a very, very strong, deep trough. You're looking at very cold air aloft here, and that trough just digs down. In fact, you could almost close off an upper low. If you're going to see storms this time of year, you are going to see an upper low, a strong upper low signature to it. That's what creates all this cold air aloft, and you get any kind of vertical motion. You get all this dynamic cooling. So when you're dealing with a really deep, intense surface low, you're going to and very deep features in the upper atmosphere that support it. That really creates an incredibly volatile atmosphere. Very strong vertical motions, very strong lift, and you get dynamic cooling as in the process, and you wind up with a snowstorm, a late season snowstorm. I want to also pull out. There's one other date that Timothy mentioned, and I believe it was March 31st. Well, I'll know soon enough. It was March 31st, 1997. Why does it only go to the 30th? That's weird. That is so bizarre. Last I checked, there were 31 days in March. Okay, so let's see. 1997, March. All right. I'm trying to see if this was. All right, there it is. Okay, so here's the beginnings of it. Another instance where you have a deep trough swing. This actually doesn't look all that different than with what we've got now, with a deep trough to the west. I wish we had maps that had a bit more detail with the upper air, but it's the same idea here. Now you've got a low that's cutting off in western Pennsylvania, that blue patch there, and the surface low. I'm going to pull the surface maps up on the other side so you can take a look at this. But you've got the surface low east of the Maryland coast, and this particular storm produced some 20 and 30 inch amounts from the Catskills across northern Connecticut and through much of Massachusetts, and in the middle in the middle and upper Hudson Valley. This was a big snow producer for the inland areas, and here it is on the map for this is time-wise is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, March 31st. Deep cutoff that drops down into southern Pennsylvania there, maybe even into northern Virginia. You've got a wrapped up less than 88 low. I'm going to pull it up on the other, site. But again, you see the idea here with respect to the upper features. You get a really, really strong deep trough that wants to either phase, or it phases and cuts off, or it phases and goes negative. So let's pull up the March 1997 7 storm for the, I'll go to the 30th as the first day. You can watch it take shape here. I'll go a little wider. And there's a lead low up near Nova Scotia that's pulling away. You've got a stretch all the way back to the Carolinas and Virginia. And now you're going to have, here's your storm as that high to the, look at the high that's out up to the west. When we get close, we could take a look at how cold this air actually was. But there's your surface low just deepening rapidly. Drops down to a 979 low here. That is a very, very deep low. And if you look at the temperatures, we're looking at the time frame here. This is at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday, March 31st. And you've got temperatures in the low 30s and 20s. It looks like some upper 30s near the coast. I see a heavy snow there, the heavy snow symbol in Albany. I'm not sure what station that might be in Connecticut. It could be Danbury with a 32-degree reading and moderate snow. Heavy rain right along the coast. Let's go to the next map, the next time frame. And there it is at 11 o'clock at night. That's a wrapped-up gale center that you've got there, a less than 980 low. So it's no wonder that north and west of that low center and with the kind of upper air that was being indicated that you wound up with these very, very extreme amounts. And I would venture to say, just going back on my memory on this, that you are probably, it was probably a pretty good bet that a lot of the high-end numbers were not in the forecast. This would be certainly a situation where you'd be seeing a lot of forecasts being updated on the fly. I don't, down near the coast, the amounts were much less. I think I saw where New York City was in a band of 1 to 3 inches out of this, but not too far north and west. You got into some of those very, very high amounts. So you see how these storms play out. These late winter season storm or early spring storms. It's all about dynamics and intensity. You get a really deep storm. You can compensate for the lack of real cold air, quote unquote, in a big hurry. So let's look at this one in particular, and we'll watch the NAM tonight. Now you see how the surface low is straddling just along the immediate coast, kind of moves out off the New Jersey coast by tomorrow morning. And one of the things that the NAM was guilty of is trying to rush this out too quickly. It's taking longer and longer for this to move out. And while we go through the overnight, take a look at what happens in upstate New York. This is where you get your dynamic cooling starts to come into play. Cold air getting drawn in and drained down from the north. The low is beginning to intensify, so you start to see this expanding area of rain changing to snow. The cold air here is minimal relatively speaking, and certainly less than those other events that we saw. So you're not going to see that cold air getting drawn down all the way down to the coastline. Now, the storm is going to be strengthening. The upper trough is going to be swinging through tomorrow, and that's going to really just get the winds going. It's going to crank tomorrow night into Saturday in much of the Northeast with gusts of 40 or even 50 miles an hour, with a 980-ish low there in eastern Maine. And we're at, by the way, this is at 11 o'clock tomorrow night, so the snows are starting to wind down, so that by Saturday morning they're just about done. But you still have the tight gradient left, and I think that kind of makes sense in terms of how this is all going to progress. I want to bring up the upper air, since we showed you the upper air with the those two big systems. And by the way, Timothy Veltman, thanks for recommending and asking me to bring this on. I'm not always front and center in my head about past history, so if you guys see something that that matches up well for a given date, let me know. And especially if you're on Patreon, just send me just message me, and I'll see if I can work it in to the live stream. Okay, so here's our upper air, the phasing of that northern and southern stream, and now, of course, there's another short wave behind it that is impacting all of this, and you can see the NAM strengthens this upper low along the New Jersey coast overnight and into Friday, and then it responds to that next short wave diving down and lifting up northward into New England. The one diving down is the upper trough that is going to set off all the wind, and of course it's also responsible for deepening the surface system in eastern New England. And of course the whole thing just pivots around and then just kicks out to the east. It's a pretty, this wind up being a big surprise for me. I really thought that southern shortwave was going to get kicked along, and if it was going to phase, it was going to phase out further to the east. But sometimes you get it wrong, and that's it happens. And now, of course, you've got the impact of the second shortwave coming down. What an exception, really, by the way, to everything we've seen all winter. This particular system is unlike any of the ones we saw all winter long, in that we're actually dealing with some semblance of a coastal low. And by the way, this is not a nor'easter at all. This is a deepening, coast-hugging low that is running up into southern New England, and that is it. Okay, I know there's a lot of stuff flying around out there regarding this, so you know what? Everybody's going to do what they're going to do. You guys know what I'm thinking and what I'm saying with this. So now this is going to pull out, and now we're going to take a look at what's going on for Monday. I still think that this is going to wind up being no big deal. The system for Monday has come into California, and you see it here on the upper air. This is the upper air from late this afternoon. You've got this upper low moving into the southwest, and it's taking its time moving eastward. You got to wait for that other system in the east to get out of the way. The only thing I will say is there's still going to be some model volatility for another day or so because we've got this big system here in the east, and we have to kind of wait for it to pull out before we could really come to terms with the second one. But the second short wave is coming east. The north is coming down, much like it just did in the last case. And this is the NAMS view. I'm going to switch to the GFS so we go out a little further. And this time around, the north, unlike what's happening now, okay, so what's happening now is that northern shortwave drops in, another northern shortwave drops in. With the next one, the northern shortwave is dropping down, and it's dropping down much further to the east, so it's acting as a suppressant. It's squashing this system to the southeast. It doesn't have the lift that this one does, and I don't see how the models are going to correct to show a repeat performance of this. So in this particular instance, and we mentioned yesterday, as we run the surface through, there's your east storm moving out. Here comes your wave with the California system moving east on Sunday, and then up to the north along the Canadian border, you've got a cold front that's dropping southward with a big high. We mentioned yesterday, does the front has to get through first and then the wave, and today's runs seem to be showing that idea, but I tend to think that we could see this wind up being suppressed even further south. There is a narrow area of snow being indicated for a few hours Monday night. That's what that narrow strip of blue, trust me when I tell you, it does not amount to very much at all. I think what you would wind up seeing is some rain showers, changes over to some snow showers, and that's it. The areas that might have a chance for something a little bit more actually will wind up being more to the south than the areas in and around New York City. Maybe from Philadelphia down to Washington, D.C., Baltimore, there might be a little bit more to tap here. But you know what? I'm not going to get into that as far as a specific forecast. I'm just kind of openly speculating here. But this is really tough in comparison to what we're dealing with now. The upper air is nothing like what you're seeing. So you're basically dealing with a front with a flat wave. You're squeezing out whatever moisture you could squeeze out of the atmosphere, and then the low goes on its merry way, shooting out to the east. And then later on next week, we're back to those the southwest isobars, because we're going to go into a bit of a ridge here in the east for the latter part of next week. So we could see some rather more, some temperatures at least trying to get warm toward next Thursday, Friday, before the next system tries to come down from the north. Fails on this GFS run anyway, and we've got to wait for a stronger cold front to come through sometime next Sunday. So the overall upper pattern here is, let's run back. All right, so from early, here's our system for today and for tonight and tomorrow. Trough pulls out. Next upper low strengthens there in Labrador. The southern, see the difference here is the short waves for tonight's system and Friday's system drop way south. You have that ridge built up the Rockies into western Canada, but after this lifts out, the next short wave trough doesn't quite do that. The trough position is further east. You get a short wave to drop down, but it gets suppressed, and of course after that goes out, guess what? It's done. You have a strengthening upper low in Hudson Bay that goes into northern Labrador, but it doesn't drive a trough into the east. It actually drives a trough in the northern plains and upper Midwest. So your trough axis for next weekend is much further to the west. So that allows the warm up here in the east. You get that ridge to build, and then it kind of gets it gets a little chilly. The trough, I think, still is going to probably want to go more toward the west than anything else in the longer term as we get into the month of April. So that to me means that we'll have opportunities for some warmer days with some cold shots squeezed in between. So that pretty much, I think, sizes up everything that's going on tonight. Very, very interesting, this system in the east. Oh, you know what? Let's take a look at WPC. I didn't bring up what they're doing here for the next 7 days, because they're always a good clue as to what they're thinking. They don't have an axe to grind. So I've always said that their forecasts actually are have a certain lack of bias, so they're pretty good. The front end loaded northeast with the precip for much of this is going to be what's going on now, and not that much from the system for Monday night into Tuesday. The precip across the Tennessee and Ohio Valley, not too bad, 1/2 inch to 1 inch over the next 7 days. Florida is pretty much dry for the whole state. The only other area that's really taking action is Central and Northern California, with some 3, 4, and 5 inch rain amounts being indicated there. So it's all about the trough that's in the east right now, and that and action that eventually starts to move back into the western part of the United States. So we've got our nice crowd here tonight, which is always good to see. Nice to see all the Long Island folks that are on tonight as well. Scott Briller, U.S. snow cover on the first day of spring, 27% last month on this date, and the highest percentage of the winter, 59. Oh, okay. So last month on this date, it was at 59%, and now we're at 27% right now. Remember, last year at this time, the Northeast got its 4th nor'easter, and this was the one that produced some of the biggest snow amounts of actually the third. Well, depending on which area you're talking about, each one kind of hit a max area in a different part of the geography of the Northeast. The last one was the one that impacted my area the most. I got 19 inches out of it, which was quite cool, especially being on the coast. It's the heaviest snowfall I've ever seen so late in the winter season. Chuck Cardillo, nice to see you on board tonight. Keith James, pattern was flat all winter. Surprised to see a storm like this develop now. I have to tell you, Keith, this really so much reminds me of the winters in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. That's exactly what would happen. you would have a horrible pattern, okay, through much of the winter. And then toward the end, when you got into the month of March, you wound up with a couple of snow events. And this used to happen on a regular basis through the winters that I went through from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It really hasn't happened so much in the last 19 or 20 years or so. But it's funny you should bring that up, because that I've been thinking all year, all through the winter, that this winter very much reminded me of a winter in the winters of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It really behaved in so many ways like those winters did. And now, of course, you have, I guess, for the snow lover, sort of the insult to injury of having this very dynamic looking event that's going to bring some big snows up to elevated areas. It's just not cold enough to bring it down to the coast. That's the main difference. There's just not a lot of cold air behind with this storm. It's all upper air. It's all cyclonic. It's all being caused by the deep upper air cyclone. And oftentimes, when the atmosphere gets cooled that way, I want to use the word inefficient. There's a lack of Arctic air. There's a lack of cold Canadian air. So you have to kind of create the cold air from the top down. And that is not the most efficient way to do it. And it makes it, if you're looking for a widespread snow event, you're not going to get it. You're going to get it in those elevated areas and not so much in the valleys. All right, so you know what? I'm going to wrap it up at this point, folks. Thanks for being here. Why are you on Mount Facebook? MT Facebook? I'm not sure what that means. Did you misspell something there? I do have. I'm gonna have my Facebook show tonight, by the way, with Joe Rayo at 9:25 Eastern time. Ryan Kane, I saw reports of 5 to 10 inches of rain. Is that possible? Are you talking about down over in Maryland? You know what? That radar signature was pretty impressive. Let me see if I can pull up. Sometimes I can get if there's anything down there with respect to rainfall amounts. I don't see any flash flood warnings up. There are flood warnings, but not flash flood warnings. I'm just going to pull up. Let me read one of their warnings really fast. Okay, hang on. Sorry about that. They're mentioning for areas in western Carroll County in north central Maryland, Montgomery County, eastern Frederick County, 2 inches already on another half an inch on top of that. I'm just trying to see if I can pull up another area. Let's see. They're mentioning some river flooding down in parts from Madison County in northwestern Virginia, Orange County in central Virginia, Greene County, Rappahannock County, and Culpeper County. But they're not saying here how much rain has fallen. But look, judging from the radar signature I saw, I wouldn't be at all shocked if there's some amounts in the 3, 4, 5 inch range. But I'm going to try one more thing. Hang on, I'm going to see if I can pull up a Doppler and see if they've got some of these stations. Oh, look at that! All right, so let's look. I'll bring this up because this is pretty dramatic. Hang on a second. So let's bring up. This is the Doppler storm total view. Okay, so the red areas here in northeastern Virginia and in western Maryland, that's all 5 inches plus. So yeah, I'm not. That matches up really well with what's on the radar. I'll bring the latest radar here as of 8:08. Look at the echoes over western Maryland and on up into northernmost Virginia here. That is very heavy rain that moved on through, and it's been taking forever for that area to play through. So yeah, those 5-inch amounts, Ryan, look pretty legit. Clearly the Doppler supports 5-inch plus rainfall amounts there, and they got a little bit more to go before this is all said and done. Let's come back to the rain totals picked up by the radar are pretty extreme. Yeah, they do. It kind of makes sense. It's taken all afternoon for that area to move through. Jason, I don't know if Ellicott City. I think Ellicott City is east of this. So I would say probably not. I haven't seen anything that suggests otherwise with respect to that. Timothy says, hopefully Facebook sends me an alert tonight that Joe and Joe is on. Got one on my muted phone, but never got one on my tablet. And I always use my tablet. Timothy, it's so frustrating deal with them. I never know. They've got this new thing with the top fans, and I think you're listed as a top fan. Now, when I post to top fans only, I've been putting up some stuff just for top fans to see. For example, giving them an early alert to this live stream. I would think that should mean that anybody who's a top fan should get that particular post, but Facebook doesn't work that way, and they still wind up really limiting who gets and who sees what, and it's very, very frustrating to say the least. So figure 9:25. So look for it at about 9:25, and then just flip on my page, and I guess you could just just wait for it to come on. But that's the plan of attack tonight for Joe and I. All right, folks, it's 10 minutes after 8 o'clock Eastern time, in case you're watching this on a replay. So make sure you check your latest radars by going to weather.gov. Those of you who are interested in a full weather experience, you might want to consider my weather platform on Patreon. We are 256 strong and growing. It's just $2 a month. The price of a cup of coffee. You get weather coverage all day long, live streams just for you. You can message me anytime, like Timothy did tonight, asking me to talk about the storms from April of 2000 and the 1997 storm. So that, and I get folks always messaging me comments and questions, and that platform really is a good place to do it in. Meanwhile, you be sure to download my weather app for all mobile devices. That's absolutely free. The links for both Patreon and the weather app are on there. And if you would like, this is a really easy way to support my channel, because it doesn't really cost you anything. If you happen to be shopping on Amazon, you can use my Amazon link and then just search from there. You don't have to buy what's on that page. Just search, and you will get your stuff, and Amazon will throw me back a few cigars, and I'm a happy camper, and it doesn't cost you a dime. So thank you very much for those of you who have supported me that way, or if you've joined Patreon, or however way you've done it. Super chat here. Paul Roman, thanks again. You hit super chat tonight. Really, really appreciate it. I'm actually stopping to meet a friend of mine for a cigar tonight after the show at 10 o'clock. So I am going to get myself a nice cigar for what you sent me on Super Chat. Thank you very much. Joe and Joe Show on Facebook at 9:25. If we don't see you then, we'll see you tomorrow.